Hey guys, I'm Rachel Castile. Welcome to Typology Corner. Today I'm going to talk about the growth and stress paths of the Enneagram. This is also known as the directions of integration and disintegration. So, this is really looking at the lines that connect all of the types. So we all have a core type, but we're connected to two other types within the Enneagram diagram. And depending on our emotional state, whether we're stressed out or moving towards growth, we can lean into the attributes of these other two types. We can exhibit the average to unhealthy parts of them and also the healthy parts. So, from there are two other paths that I want to highlight that are less commonly talked about that really give a full picture of four paths of growth that we can kind of discern where we are in this sort of process. So there's also the blind spot path and then the converging path. So first, I'll kind of talk about the converging path. The idea of that is when looking at those three types to really move to the healthy side of all three, that's like the epitome of health, to kind of conquer those aspects within ourselves. I would say conquering the negative and coming out of that, and then it really exemplifying the positives of all three. Like that's something that's very accessible to the way we're wired. And then the blind spot path is more kind of tucked away and hidden. It's exhibiting kind of like growth, but it's like the average to unhealthy side of the growth type. Um, and then the stress type is when the converging type comes in, that normally the stress one is going to the negative of the stress type. And then the converging path is like the epitome of even the stress one, you go into the high side of that too. So that's just a bit of an overview. I'll get into it more in this video. But to start out, let's just look at the diagram to see all 9 types. So yeah, this is how the diagram is. This is all of the types around the primary circle as like the main shape of the Enneagram. And then within that, there are 2 more shapes. They might not be readily noticed just immediately, but there's a triangle and then this other shape that I can't really define. I don't know that it has a name, not that I know of. But yeah, so here's a slide just to kind of highlight those two. So these are 2 distinct growth paths, kind of showing which types are connected to each other. So from there, looking back, you can see that triangle in there. That is type 3, 6, and 9 are all connected to each other. And then the other ones are the 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, then 7. So we can move in a positive direction, which would be integration, or we can move in a negative direction, which is disintegration, along the paths of the diagram. So depending on what your primary type is, you can then see which of those 2 you're connected to within that sort of spectrum of movement. So yeah, let's go on ahead and look at the stress path. So this is what that looks like. We've got our, this is the introduction of the arrows, which is another part. It's not always on the diagrams. It's not totally needed, but in just explaining the movement of kind of similar energies, I guess is one way to say it, or moving from one energy to the next, to the next, to the next. The arrows here will show the direction of disintegration in this particular image. So when in a state of stress, you can follow these arrows. Let's start at 1. So it goes from 1 to 4, 2, 8, 5, 7, then back to 1. So a way to kind of understand this is if you are a 1, when stressed out, you will go to the average to unhealthy traits of the 4. So the way to think about the stress path is it's the easiest for you to access because we can all be stressed out. It doesn't take growth to be stressed out. It's really the easiest way that we can move. This stressful place actually can be more relatable to you than your actual type, depending on where you are in life. So me personally, I'm a type 2. And for the longest, I thought I was a type 8. And if you look at the direction of disintegration, you can see that 2 and 8 are next to each other in that bottom description of like the order. But looking at the arrows, 2, the arrow is pointing towards the 8 in this example here. So in unhealth, in stress, I can go to the average to unhealthy attributes of the 8. And when reading the descriptions of an 8, I'm like, oh, that's me. Like that, I feel that way. I do those things. That's who I am, you know? But at that time, I was living in a very stressful time of my life. So I can relate to that. I was kind of running from things I didn't want to deal with, sort of place. So yeah, I was stressed out. So something to look at. So the triangle doesn't connect to the other types. So there's a path within the 9, 6, and 3 that they have their own order. So I have them kind of distinctly set apart at the bottom. So in stress, 9 goes to 6. In stress, 6 goes to 3. In stress, 3 goes to 9. And just remember that stress is not the positives. It's more the average to unhealthy attributes of that other type. Is something you can see in yourself. Just as much as you can identify your core type, this is something that is true about you as well. So now let's look at growth. In this example, the arrows are facing in the opposite direction. So this is the direction of integration. This is whenever we're in a good place, when we're starting to believe truth in our lives, we're starting to grow, and we're starting to see ourselves more clearly. We're starting to love ourselves. We're starting to kind of get free from the coping strategies a bit. And what freedom looks like in this sort of way, I'll take like type 9, they start to go to 3. So a trait about 9 is kind of going to sleep to themselves, and not really living out their passions. So whenever 9s are in health, they become like a 3. They become a doer, really driven, and a leader type, and really starts to like chart their own course in life. So yeah, just whenever you look in all of the descriptions of health, it matches these growth paths. And you can start to see, if I was to talk about an 8 in health, you can see 2 sorts of attributes in them. So yeah, the path is 1, 7, 5, 8, 2, 4, 1. And then for the triangle, it is 9, 3, 6, 9. And you can kind of remember that code, or just kind of memorize what types are connected to what. I kind of just memorized that sort of aspect, and the code is kind of new to me to look at it this way. So, but yeah, these are 2 of the paths. And then getting into the blind spot path and the converging path, how that manifests. I'll use my type as an example. So I'm a type 2. And so stress, just if I put it in a hierarchy, stress is the easiest to go to. Then from there, the second easiest to kind of manifest in your life is the blind spot path. And this is going to the growth type, but it's going to the average and unhealthy aspects of the growth type. So it's not quite real growth. It's just something you're doing unconsciously around people that you're comfortable with. And it's something that has been described that you wouldn't really do this around just anybody. You'd almost be embarrassed, but it gives you a sense of false growth somewhat, is one way to look at it, that you're behaving like that other type, but not the good sides of them kind of comes out. It kind of comes out, just spills out when you're really comfortable. So this also goes to show that we very much are moving kind of back and forth around into these other 2 types in all the ranges. that there really is, uh, it's a part of the psychology of these sort of ego states that we can find ourselves in. When pushed on or when comfortable, we exhibit these other aspects. So, when really looking at type growth, it's the second half of that. It's the growth path and then the converging path. That's when you're really breaking away from that ego grip, from the coping strategies, from the lies. You're choosing to not just live on autopilot. You're choosing to go against the grain of your habitual patterns. And it can be painful, it can be uncomfortable, but that's what growth really feels like and looks like. All right, so I'll talk more as a two. So, just the core type two that I am, it's that place of kind of struggling with not feeling that I'm enough, and then going out to find value through helping is kind of the coping strategy of two. If you're just think of just the average sitting in my type sort of place. So let's kind of walk out what growth looks like or what stress looks like. The two, when pushed on, when stressed out, can go to the unhealthy sides of eight, which can look like being defensive, getting angry, kind of blowing up on people, feeling like not wanting to be taken advantage of, just like being guarded, not wanting to be vulnerable, expressing anger, wanting control, not wanting to be in a position where I feel powerless. That sort of place is easy for a two to access within themselves. That can come out very easily. So just think like in stress, you can find a two exhibiting a lot of the negative eight traits. A two, this isn't who they are in health, it's who they are. It's kind of, somebody might want to say, like, oh, that's who they are. I think we can all kind of catch each other in stress and be like, oh, that's the real them. But that's us at our worst, is to move to that stress point. But yeah, so that's what that looks like. And then going to the blind spot path as a two, that can be kind of being emotional, being kind of like leaning into self pity a bit, feeling different, feeling like kind of going into the world of my own emotions, being like kind of self-absorbed sort of place, like needing to like process my emotions and like indulging in the emotional sort of world, I guess. Being, what else could I say? I definitely can like become more self-aware to kind of articulate this, but just to see like places that I've been where, yeah, kind of, I guess I could call it self-absorbed, like the average to unhealthy attributes of that. Like leaning into the melancholy of emotions. Just I could play music and just be in my own world sort of place. Like I'm disengaging from other people. I could feel like something's wrong with me, something like that. So I could express that like um living according to my own feelings, but never really do that around people that I guess aren't like my inner circle sort of place. It's not something that I would be proud of people seeing me in such a state, is an example of that. But moving into actual growth, which is kind of the next stage, this doesn't always happen in a hierarchy order. Like it's not stress, then blind spot, then growth, then converging. But moving into growth as a two is when the two actually knows their value, knows that they're loved, are prioritizing their needs, meeting their own needs, communicating their needs. They're no longer just using the coping strategy of being helpful to other people to find value. They are really meeting their own needs, nurturing themselves. And from that place, they move into the high side, the healthy side of four, and they start leaning into their creativity, their imagination, starting to cultivate their own dreams and visions, and like to live out an expression of their own self, like becoming an artist. Yeah, like loving their uniqueness and expressing their uniqueness. So I think the word artist, that individualistic artist sort of person, is really what twos become in health. Like in health, like they are really not defined at all by two stuff. Like they're sitting in real love and they're becoming aware of their own heart states, their inner landscapes, as healthy fours are. Like healthy fours are very self-aware and they create from that self-awareness. It's not a self-absorbedness because something's wrong with me and I'm withholding myself. Other people have things that I don't have, sort of place. I'll tell you, like, it's easy to think you're either one of these types for this reason. I used to identify with a four for a while. I thought I was a four, and for a while I thought I was an eight, because I could see that kind of getting more, I guess, revelation of seeing like how the blind spot path was really in my life. Like I knew something was wrong with me, is how I lived for a long time. Like something's off with me, but I'm gonna fix it. That was kind of my way. Like that was how I lived that out. It's like, I don't know why I see myself this way. I don't tell everybody this. When I would tell people that I felt that way, they'd be like, I would never imagine. You just seem like you're totally fine. You're just at the top of the world. And I think that's really being a two, because that's the proud of the two, that I'm good. I don't have any needs. You look all put together, sort of thing. With this, in privacy with people I'm close to, I could admit that I feel like an unhealthy four. Yeah, I'm getting it now. And yeah, and then when stressed, man, that eight is there. I've seen that for sure. So, but in growth, it's like I'm tapping into my creativity. I'm realizing that my life really is about taking who I am and creating something with it. Like that's literally, I can see the vision of that as like the epitome of that. So now, what does it look like to get into the converging path? The converging path for type 2 is the healthy side of 8. So what do 8s do amazingly? They are really good with boundaries, being able to say no to things that are not good for them. Yeah, so this is what I'm seeing. Like, I really can identify with the converging path, and like, there's just more, you know? But how to move into the health of all three, converging looks like for the two, just like having healthy standards, healthy boundaries, not getting angry, like the negative side, like blowing up, or like, man, I'm so annoyed, I'm so offended, and this person did this, and I can't believe them, and all this stuff, but still feeling, but in the end, whenever they approach me, I say, oh yeah, I'll do it for you, that sort of thing. That's just the negative side of 8, like complaining, like, oh, just this, and this person is doing this to me, they're making me feel this way. I can really, like, I've lived that way so much, like the unhealthy 8, like, and still being led by the 2 who's like, oh, but I want to help and I don't want to be seen as selfish. There's all of this sort of inner workings in that. Yeah, so the unhealthy side of 8 is easy to access, and in growth, I'm starting to see that I am learning to have good boundaries, to say no, to not feel bad for my no, to search what I need and what's good for me and what's not good for me. You know, having positive self-control over my own life. Like getting in touch with my power, getting in touch with my voice and my strength. Protecting other people. That's a very positive thing in the 8. That I've related to most of my life. I'm like, I've been protective too. I used to think I was an 8, you know, but I'm like, no, where am I in the spectrum of things? Because when you look at these numbers, you're sitting between 2. So it's like, which of the 2 are you in between? That's another way to find your core type. So I can really see myself moving to 4 in health, and even moving to 4 in that blind spot sort of emotional place of feeling flawed or feeling different, feeling emotional, leaning into that, analyzing all of that. Like, it's more of a private sort of thing that would happen in me. Yeah, so you can just see this movement that we all have, growth and stress and just ways that we're moving into these other types in the good and the bad. So, yeah, that's kind of it. Like, I guess I can go back a bit just so you can see all of the types here. Um, just get acquainted with the movement of the two other types. I guess the more that you learn about all of the types, you can then begin to see like where you, or I guess which ones you're relating to, because you have two wings on each side of you, then you're also connected to two other types. So, yeah, I still think like knowing your type has a lot to do with the core motivations, but this is definitely another aspect that when you do know your type, you can kind of track yourself and discern these other attributes within yourself. And literally this path I've been on, like um just in my life with God, like I've seen the things I've had to deal with in my heart, and things I've had to let go of, and then I've felt freedom, and I'm like, oh, I feel empowered now in an area that I struggled in for so long. Like just this journey I've been on. When I started learning about the Enneagram paths within Beth McCord's Your Enneagram Coach certification program, she's the first one I heard talk about the blind spot and the converging added to the stress and the growth paths. And I was like, whoa, this is literally the full spectrum. This is everything, you know? Um, so yeah, I love this. Like looking at all the states we can find ourselves in. So yeah, this video is just really an overview, an introduction to this whole topic. A video could be done on each one of these paths within each one of the types. Like, so that's a big part about Enneagram coaching, is getting coaching to your specific journey in great detail. So that's something I'm available for, and I'm still working on my certification. So whenever I finish that, like all the more like I'm ready. Like, come on, I want to help people. So, but yeah, right now I'm learning, growing, and I just want to share this with you just because this lesson in of itself, I think, is the biggest thing. Once you're really self-aware to know your type, this right here is the journey. This is it kind of paved out for you. Um, yeah. So just, I guess I'll leave you with that final thought that health is your type, but health is the types you're connected to, and really strengthening and growing into the positives of all of it, because that's the beauty of the Enneagram. It's a dynamic system of behavior, of life, like all the states. It's still incredible. I'm learning about it, and I'm like, it's amazing how real my type is for me. So I want to hear other people's stories. I want to really get to know, just even I can see in other people's lives. I'm like, yeah, that is a bit of a tendency how they're connected. But yeah, guys, I hope you got value out of this. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more content. See y'all in the next one.